Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode, we got a very special guest, an honorary member, an ex-retiree. We pulled him back from the G League. He's back, the one and only Terrance.
I'm back.
How you feeling?
Tired, man. Super tired.
Well, today what we have planned is an AMA. And for those that don't know what an AMA is, it's Ask Me Anything. And we know you, Terrance. Congratulations. You've recently become a new parent.
Thank you.
You and your wife. So we got a bunch of rapid fire questions that we're going to ask you. And hopefully you'll tell us a little bit more about your experiences and how it impacts your career.
All right. Shoot away.
So let's get into it. So was being a parent what you had expected?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a juicy one.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if I had a lot of expectations walking into it, but I wasn't that nervous. I feel like a lot of first-time parents going into it, they're nervous.
What are they nervous about, though?
I think it's a combination of things. A, being able to take care of a child. B, just being able to, I guess, maintain their life as an individual or as a couple. I think those are probably the two biggest ones. But for me, I think the nervousness just wasn't there because I probably had a bit of experience when I was growing up taking care of my younger sister. We're like 9 years apart, right? So I don't want to say it's fresh. It's not, but you just kind of, it's like riding a bike. You don't really forget how to take care of a little human being.
Fair.
Yeah.
Is it a 9-to-5 job, or how does your week look like now?
Oh, 9 to 5 seems easy in comparison now. Funny enough, I'm on paternity leave. My Annie's on mat leave, and I told everyone, I'm like, yeah, just wait until I go on leave. I'm gonna have a lot more time to do things. I was wrong.
And we haven't seen him since in the podcast.
Yeah, you haven't seen me since. It's been 2 months. But you're working around the clock. It's nonstop, especially at the beginning. One thing I didn't know is that you have to feed a newborn every 2 to 3 hours, because when I was young and I was babysitting my sister, I didn't really have to do that. My parents took care of that, so I didn't see it and I didn't know about it. So that was new to me. So learning how to adjust to that and sleep in 2-3 hour stretches is a bit of an adjustment. So, but eventually you get the hang of it, and now you just learn how to operate like a zombie.
How many hours of sleep do you get on a night, average?
4, 5, maybe 5 on good nights. I got 3.5, maybe 4 yesterday. Do
you think you can? What are your thoughts on now potentially when you do return to work? What are your thoughts? Like, do you think that's even possible at this stage, or do you think it'll get easier from what you hear?
It would be possible. It'd be harder for my wife. It'd be harder for Annie for sure. I think that if I didn't take pat leave, she would have gone crazy by now. We had her mom over helping us at the beginning, and I mean, even with our parents supporting or doing whatever they can, it doesn't feel like it's enough, because they're not going to be up doing those night feeds with you, right? That's something that you have to do, and we're doing 100% breastfeeding, so I don't know, it's tough. I don't know what return to work will be like. I imagine that by the time that happens, baby will be sleeping better and life will go back to normal, but we'll see.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Were there some things that knowing what you know now, were there some things that you should have considered from either a personal or career perspective before kind of family planning?
Good question. I feel like I felt this way even before the baby. I was like, if you have anything that you need to accomplish in your personal life, career-wise, or even just personal goals, really try and hammer those out before the kid comes, because it feels near impossible by the time you have that baby, because your life is no longer about you. You're working around the baby schedule, and I can only imagine that we get busier from here. Once the kid is old enough to go to school, they're going to want to take classes. You got to take them to this, that. I don't know how parents do it. I really don't. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just advice around that, if there's any personal matters that you feel super passionate about, make sure you just really give it a good shot before having a kid, because financially and timing wise, it feels near impossible once that kid comes at the beginning. Not to say I always feel that way, but it definitely feels like things get put on pause for at least a couple months to a year.
Wow. Has your motivation shifted? Like, how has your mindset shifted now that you have a kid? Like, everyone says that, like, you know, when you have your firstborn, things are going to change.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think the general theme here is your life is no longer yours, and it's just you're motivated for the kid. And I think my outlook is just, it's like a sense of fearlessness towards life, because your life is no longer yours. You're living for that kid, and you'll do whatever for that kid. And there's something refreshing about that. It's like nothing holds you back.
So knowing what you know now, you know, if you were to be a manager, like how more understanding would you be if you had like an individual contributor on your team saying, oh, I got to do this for my kid, or I got to take off some time for this? Like, has that shifted from, you know, when being a manager when you were not a parent, and now if you were to be a manager, you know, what are your thoughts on that when an IC comes to you and requests his time off or something to take care of the family?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has it shifted drastically?
Drastically.
It's that mutual understanding.
It's a mutual understanding. It's understanding everything that goes into it leading up to having that kid, and then everything that happens afterwards once the kid is here. You know, you hear it, you're like, oh, I gotta take time off to do this, and then you're empathetic when you hear stuff like that. But until you actually go through it, you're like, oh yeah, this person's going through a lot. So I think that as a manager now, well, not now. I mean, like, if I were a manager now, I would definitely. There's a stronger sense of empathy towards that, or someone going through that, because it's definitely not easy.
100%. Because we see it a lot, you know, happen at work, right? Where or candidates during interviews, it's like, oh, I got a family emergency, right? And it's hard to relate, I guess, without having kids yet or a family, but I guess that changes pretty quick.
Yeah. And I guess being young on the recruitment side, I can't even remember when we were in agency how often I heard that, but I think even if I did, it kind of fell on deaf ears. The immediate response was, okay, well, how do we reschedule you? How can we make sure you show up to this interview? It wasn't. I feel like there was a lack of empathy.
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah. But now having gone through it, I think there's definitely a little bit more appreciation for anyone that's going through that process.
So aside from empathy, like, are there any other skills that you've gained so far that you know are going to be very transferable when you go back to work, or that could give you a, you know, upper hand or anything now that you've been a parent? Being
somewhat operational with very minimal sleep. I'm not kidding.
Fair.
I feel like that's what my manager told me, is like, when you have a kid, you'll learn to operate with no sleep. I'm like, okay.
So on a scale of 1 to like Energizer Bunny, where do you rank right now? It's like 11:44 on a Saturday.
The coffee's kicking in, so about like maybe 6.5, 7.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
What are your thoughts on company work mandates in terms of like remote, hybrid, full on site? Like, what was your view on it before, and what are your views on it now?
Well, that's a good question. Before becoming a parent?
Yes.
Right. So I think before becoming a parent, my view on it was remote work is okay, but not great for companies to a certain degree. Because some roles, I feel like it's just better to be in the office. And when it comes to retention too, and I feel like I've had this conversation recently with somebody, it was just, when it comes to company retention, you need to create culture somehow. But when everybody's working remote, there's no team culture. It's harder to retain staff, especially when you work in tech, when so much of the appeal of being in tech is being in the office in that environment, right? But, you know, on the flip side of that, now as a parent, I feel I can appreciate, you know, the remote work and not, you know, having to be in the office, because then you get to be around to see your kid grow up. And I think that's something that not a lot of people had in certain roles. you know, pre-pandemic. And I know, you know, even looking at LinkedIn, there's posts on LinkedIn from new parents that you know, show appreciation towards their employers when they're given that opportunity to take that time off and spend it with their newborn, right? So I can definitely appreciate that. My view on it, is it the best for the business? Yeah, that's tough. I don't think it's the best for the business. You know, throughout the workday, you want to be as productive and efficient as possible. But, you know, when you're at home and you have a baby that's crying in the background, it's hard to just, you know, not do anything about it, right? So then you end up taking that break to go take care of the baby. But when you're taking care of a baby, it's not a break. If it feels like work, it's a lot of work. It drains you. So, you know, kind of, I as a parent, I feel it's great to be able to work from home. But if I were an employer or running a small business myself, I would want that person to be in the office, because I know you're not going to be as productive working from home. It's not an optimal environment. I can't imagine being at home all the time with the kid in the background and trying to work. It would be very frustrating. I mean, kudos to everyone that did it throughout the pandemic, but it's not easy.
So ideally speaking, what would you want? What would the ideal split look like if you were to go back to work? 3 days a week, 2 days a week, or
2 to 3 days in the office, I think. Yeah, that would be ideal.
That's awesome. How and when do you let folks know in your work environment about you that you're going to, you know, be expecting? Like at what point in the cycle, or who do you even let know, or if you can speak about who you did let know first?
Well, I think that there's no standard for when. General consensus, I feel like, is whenever you and your partner feel like you're comfortable sharing that news. But the sooner the better, right? And this is what I told my wife too. It's, you have to let your employers know so that they can plan around it. Because there could be projects, right, that are mission critical. You don't want them to be scrambling last minute to replace you. It's not fair to your manager. It's not fair to the team. It's not fair to the business. So I think the sooner the better. But at the same time, it's balancing, right? Because, you know, a lot can happen throughout a pregnancy. So you want to make sure that, you know, that you're going to have this baby. They're going to come out and like everything's going to go through as planned. So I think for us, we started sharing maybe at the 4 or 5 month mark, as soon as possible. And I think that started with, well, at work, it was, I told my manager first, and then I shared it with the team. And I think my wife did the same thing.
What were the reactions?
Happy, very happy. Which I think when you work at a large corporation, I get the sense that it might be easier. I could be wrong here, but I get the sense that it might be easier for the business to continue versus if you're working in a small shop where it's like 10 to 20 employees. Because I feel like in that situation, it could be like, oh, you're going on pat or mat leave. You sure?
do you want to take it?
Yeah, right? I didn't get that. For me, it was a good experience. And I think that might be because, you know, being in a larger corporation, it's easier to keep the machine running.
So being a dual income family though, like, were there any specific benefits that you guys receive from work? Like how does that whole pat maternity leave work? And we have a new special guest.
We have a new special guest. He has a very strong opinion about this. Sorry. Could you repeat the question?
What benefits are there available to you from like your employer, the government, you know, from going on pat leave? Like how does that process work? Is there any support? Like how does it work when one or two people in the relationship potentially lose, you know, the full-time salary?
Yep. So for me, I don't get any benefits from the government, but my company has really good parental leave benefits. So I'm not taking any of the EI benefits from Annie, which is great because it allows her to take the full 12 months and us not to have to worry about the finances as much. But there's really no benefits that we're receiving, to be honest, as a dual income family, because in Canada, there's thresholds, right? If you're earning X amount, this is how much you receive. Over this threshold, it gets less and less and less. For us, we're very fortunate that we earn, decent enough income between the two of us. But at the same time, it's unfortunate because now we don't get any benefits. So it becomes a bit harder in that sense.
Sorry, just to clarify, what benefits are you not getting? Like the typical employer benefits?
So the government benefits,
okay.
To clarify there. So in Canada, you have, it's the Canadian Child Benefits.
Right.
And I think it's called CCB, and then there's OCB, which is the Ontario Child Benefit. So there's two components to it. We did not qualify for either. Yeah.
Got it.
And that's usually around, it can go up to 500 to 600 a month at its max, I think. Yeah.
What about
in addition to your EI?
Okay, on top of the EI.
On top of EI.
So what's do you have any employer benefits? Like were there any programs in place from your existing employers that help support you guys during your time off? Like are you still technically an employee, or how does that work?
Yep, I think every company is unique, but I will say, having been in tech for a while, that I feel like the parental benefits in big tech are some of the best across the industries, because I've talked to some of my friends to see if they get to take as much time off as I do, and if they're compensated throughout, they don't. So for me, I'm fortunate that I get to take 5 months. I chose to take 5 months consecutive, and I'm still compensated.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm still an employee. I'm guaranteed to have a job when I go back, and there were actually quite a bit of benefits on top of that, just like gifts, meals.
Wait, you still get those?
No, it was just like one time, but it was nice, right? It's nice, but I feel like big tech in general, if you work for, I'd imagine Google probably, for example, has like great parental leave benefits. Microsoft, I know for sure. So I feel like it's a common thing in big tech, not so much outside of it. I feel like a lot of my friends outside of it, they probably got like maybe 2-3 weeks at most of parental leave, paid leave. Other than that, I don't even know if they had the option to take additional time, which I know is pretty hard on their spouse or significant other. It's hearsay, but I can see how it can be lonely and tiring when it's one person working around the clock taking care of this super, super needy, tiny human being.
Fair.
Yeah.
So on that topic then, what are your, commission jobs, as we know, there isn't like a traditional 9-to-5 in my opinion. What are your thoughts on working potentially a 9-to-5 versus a commission or sales driven role now, being in the situation you're in? Has that changed at all, or?
That makes me nervous. So, for those of you listening, I have a career in tech sales, and in tech sales, I feel like it is like running your own business, right? It's not really a 9-to-5. You get out of it what you put in, and I don't know. I feel like in a tech sales role, you're gonna have to dial the time back. And I think the flip side to that is, if you don't want to earn less, then you're just going to have to figure out a way to become more productive, more efficient, so operate better, just be a better performer.
Do more in less time.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I guess if you were to look for a new job, like would any of the prerequisites change now? Like if you were in a situation as a parent, like, do you feel that some of the prerequisites have changed, whether it be work arrangement, certain benefits, or?
I think the benefits thing is pretty big. Because, you can imagine raising a kid is probably pretty expensive, right? So the more that you have in benefits that you can pass on to your family, the better, in terms of cost savings. And like I said, big tech has some pretty great benefits that, I myself really appreciate. I'm sure that, you know, my kid will appreciate one day. So
There. You know, in the English alphabet, it's A, B, C, D, E, F. C is for career, F is for family. C comes before family in the alphabet. What are your thoughts on it now?
that's deep.
That's a good one, right?
That's a good
I came
one.
up with that.
What are my thoughts on it now?
Has the priority changed? Has that letter shifted up?
Has career shifted up?
Or has career shifted down? You know, like is family that much more important? I mean, to you, was it always important? Has it gone significant? Has it made leaps? You know, upwards or down?
I think it's made leaps upwards. I feel like both have gone up significantly in my mind, because I feel like you can't have one without the other. You know, I think, and this goes back to the conversation that I have about money with a lot of people. Like, do I need a lot of money in my life? It's like, no, but you know, if you think about the things that you care about, you need money to support those things. And like family, for example, if you want your kid to be able to enroll in some of the best classes, you know, outside of school, like extracurriculars, that's going to cost money, right? And how do you support that? Well, if you're an independent business owner and you're doing, you know, really well, then great. You know, that's one route. But a lot of people, they continue to work their 9-to-5 or corporate jobs, and you need to earn more to fund your kid's lifestyle. You want your kid to have more opportunities than you had, right? So I feel like the drive, the focus in both areas it's shot up. Everything else, like my time is no longer my time. As much as I'd like to have me time to go do fun things that I enjoy, it's like, no, I gotta work hard so that this kid can, you know, have a really good life, an awesome life. And that's, I don't know, I feel like that's almost a trick question with no right answer.
There isn't one.
Yeah.
There isn't one.
Both have shot up.
Yeah. I did not expect that answer too. Would you wish your child to pursue the same steps you took in your career?
No.
Why? That was a quick no.
Yeah, that was a quick no. Because I feel like I've already had this conversation with my wife. I've told her, I'm like, the last thing I want for our kid is for him to be a corporate 9-to-5er. Not to say that if they want to go down that route, that, you know, when we fully supportive, it's more, you know, having the option to do anything else in life that they want. I feel like I wasn't really given that opportunity. I think that, you know, being a first generation, you know, I don't want to say Canadian born Chinese. I was actually born in Hong Kong, but you know, being the first here to go through university, I think our parents' generation had different expectations of us, right? It's especially in the Asian community. It's like you're becoming a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. It's just something in business.
Yep.
Right? They don't even know about tech sales. When I first got into this career, they thought it was like a Ponzi scheme. Like they had no idea what was going on.
Like in terms of career, you hear about these stories about like parents putting like, you know, was it a stethoscope, a book, a ball to choose kind of what the career path the kid's gonna try to do. Is that in the works, or is that the plan, or no? What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't thought that far.
Have you know what I'm talking about, right?
I feel like I do, but I don't know if
like
it's
you have a baby crawl in.
I know. But is that a Chinese thing?
I don't know, but I've seen it. I've heard of it.
I know what you're talking about. I
right?
feel like is that in the Korean culture? I could be wrong here. I feel like, but I know what you're talking about. No, I think really just letting the kid become who they become and guiding them in the right direction. I'm just gonna let them, you know, become the person that they're meant to be. But obviously, I want to instill the fundamentals that I think will lead them to success in life. So financial planning, for example, no matter what you do, I think having a good, strong sense of finances will carry you pretty far in life. Just understanding math, right? Helps with logic, being a logical thinker. And who knows, maybe they're a super creative person and you know, they'll excel in the arts. But if they do, you know, giving them the freedom to explore that, So do I want them to go down this career path? Not necessarily, no, because, this was a very by the books, hey, this is what the average person does when you go to university. You go to business school, you end up in this path, and you go down that route, and eventually you're retired, it's safe, right?
Fair.
Personally, I don't believe in living a safe life. I think you live once, and you might as well make the most out. And at the time that you're here, and have fun with it, right? And there's something romantic about not knowing, where life can go, but having this incredible upside to your life that's worth exploring. So, anyways, long answer there to your question, but no, I would not want them going down the corporate 9-to-5 path if they don't want to.
Fair. What about timing wise, Terrance? I know you're 10 plus years in terms of working experience, and you and your wife are pretty, you're not fresh out of school and pretty, I would say, mid stages of your career. Would you change anything in terms of timing, or any thoughts on kind of timing of when to start a family, or does that impact anything?
I mean, it feels like, energy wise, I feel like it'd probably be easier to have a kid when you're young, but I feel like if you do that, that can probably hold you back career wise.
How so?
Could be wrong. Like I said, your time and attention, it starts to shift. And I think, I don't know, as a parent, you could go one of two ways. I think one, you could be like, okay, I'm super motivated to do everything I need to do now to financially set this kid up for success. Or you could go the opposite route, where you think, okay, I'm a parent now, and there's more to life than money and work. So I'm going to take the foot off the gas, right? So, I think if you're the type that it's like, okay, I'm a parent now, I'm going to take the foot off the gas, then your career is going to take a hit at the beginning. Or not at the beginning, it's just going to take a hit. Because I think it's when you're young, in those early years, where you have the hunger, ambition to really climb. That's when you do some of your best work, or at least you build the foundation, right? So that in your 30s, you can take what you learned in your mid-20s and really accelerate. But if you take your foot off the gas in your mid-20s, and you don't, you're no longer career focused, and you're not networking, you're not meeting the right people, because you're so focused on raising the kid and just that family time, it can hinder your career. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the type of person you are, right? I think if you're the latter, like I said, maybe it's better to have a kid later on in life, because then at least you'll have the foundation, to your career set up. You have met the right people, you're on a path. But I think if you're the former, and you're going to be driven either way, and you got to know yourself a little bit here, right? But if you're driven either way, I think you can probably make it work. And it'd probably be easier, because energy wise, in your mid-20s, you have a level of energy that you just don't have anymore when you're 30, right? Recovery, like going out with customers on a Thursday night, it suddenly becomes a 2-3 day recovery process. You can't just show up in the office the next day.
Do you feel that you can go out to company social still?
Yeah, probably. You just have to plan around it, right? And there's something to be said about showing up. You got to build team culture, right? You have to network. There's certain things that you have to do if you're going to go down that route, right? Being in the corporate world, being in tech is there's a lot of career opportunities, but in any market, I feel like it's a very small community.
100%.
Right? You build your reputation in there, you build your network, and it carries you. So I think showing up is important, but how you show up, that just changes a little bit. Like, are you going to be rallying all the way through with, the rest of the team when they're maybe in their early 20s and single and just ready to party? No, you're going to be a little bit more strategic about where you spend your time, energy, and also you're going to plan around that with your partner, right? You're going to let them know ahead of time if this is going to be one of those nights. It's like, hey, this is going to be one of those nights.
Fair. If partying or working with younger colleagues, if you were to be a mentor to one of them, what would you tell them about your any career or family advice if they they were planning on having a family and trying to succeed?
Oof. That's how do you paint this with a broad stroke? I don't feel like you can give cookie cutter advice to someone about that. I feel like it has to be specific to, I don't know, to the person that you're talking to.
But what's a tip? Like, what's just a general tip? You're like, that could be, someone told me that, I would have listened. Like, party harder. stay out later.
Okay, so we're talking about, so what's the advice I'm trying to give here? Is it
career,
in
like,
hindsight, or like
to someone that's, fresh out of school, starting off their career, you're their mentor. They know that you have a family. They want a family too. They want to succeed in, the corporate tech world, recruiting, sales, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, I think if I were to give like one general piece of advice, it would be figure out what you love to do and make sure that you're doing that thing and making money from it. Because once you have that kid, it becomes a lot harder to backpedal and say, I'm going to figure it out then. Because at that point, you, your partner, your kid, you're going to have a certain lifestyle that you're accustomed to, or have a life that you've already started building. And it's hard for most people to backpedal, right? I think financially it's tough, right? Imagine having a downsize. It's, for me, I feel like I'll downsize any day. It's not near impossible. Like, I'll do it. But trying to figure that out about yourself, your career, and then making those sacrifices when there's a kid in the picture becomes a lot harder, because it's like, hey, you decided to bring this kid in the world. Why do they have to go through the struggle with you? I mean, it builds character. Struggle builds character.
It does.
Don't get me wrong. But yeah, like I said, as a parent, you want to just make sure that you're setting your kid up for success and putting them in the best situation possible, so that they don't have to see your problems.
Did you have to make any big sacrifices for the sake of having a family so far in your career, or your wife's?
Career-wise, I mean, it's tough to say. I feel like taking the time off that I did for paternity leave is a bit of a sacrifice, for sure. Not to say I'd trade it, because you really only have these experiences with your newborn twice, 3 times if you're lucky. But this is my first kid, my first baby. So you don't really want to trade that. You don't want to look back at the end of your life and tell yourself, oh, I wish I had spent more time with my kid, right? Especially those early years. So, I feel like there is a bit of career sacrifice there, because you're definitely not doing anything to accelerate your career when you take time off. You're not there.
Oh yeah.
Your work can't speak for itself. So yeah, I think career there's a bit of sacrifice there.
100%. I mean, hats off in general to anyone that has a family and working. I know, I remember when I first started in the technical recruitment world, and I met one of our colleagues who had 2 kids going on a 3rd. I was like, how are you doing this? And I'm sure one day when I have a family of my own, I'll understand. But it's
shout outs to MJ.
Shout outs to MJ, because that man was crushing it. He was doing extremely well in his day job, and like, long and behold, you would never picture that he had a family that big, right?
See, he's the perfect example of the former, the type that gets super motivated when you have a kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's
crushing it.
Do you feel that you're more money motivated now? Last question, I guess, is, do you feel that has it impacted your money hunger now that you have a family, or were you perfectly content?
It's not, I think money hunger isn't the best way to put it. I'm not money hungry per se. I'm time hungry. Money is just the tool that gets me my time back in my life. So am I hungry to get time back in my life? Absolutely. So what does that mean? I need to make more money. So yeah, I'm more driven.
More time.
But like, I've never been the type to be like, I need to make X amount of dollars so that I can show off and flex what I got to someone. Like I could be a millionaire, you would never know it. And that's just how I feel. But what I really do want is time back in my life, because I think as you get older, you just get less and less of that to yourself, and less of that with the ones that you care about. You know, when you're young, you don't really appreciate time with your family, for example, your parents. When you're old, you realize you're getting old, they're getting old. You want to spend more time with them. How do you do that when you have a day job that's, 9 to 5 is not a 9 to 5, right? It's not 40 hours a week. It's usually 50 at minimum. Probably more if you're working in a sales job, right?
100%.
That's just the reality of it. But, for me, I don't lose sight of the reason why I work hard. I like to say money isn't everything, but it does make the world go around. So, am I more driven to make money? I mean, if that's how you want to phrase it, sure. It's very important.
Because it gives you the time. It buys you time.
That's because it buys me time.
Fair.
You can never have enough time.
Fair. And with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. And thanks for being part of this AMA. Hope to see you a little bit more often now, right, Terrance? Hopefully, get the three of us together again.
Yeah, practice showing up.
Yeah, practice showing up. And drop a like, drop some comments in below. If there's any questions that anyone has, feel free to shoot us a message or drop it below, and we'll address it in future podcasts. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.